clues.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea it would turn into the thing that it's turned into now?
No, not a clue. I had no faith in it. I hated it. I mean, if you get of how I got into this back in 2015, it started as just a little research project in 2014, where I was looking into Hollow Earth and I looked just about every conspiracy known to man. And then I kind of delved into flat Earth. It's like, well, this is the dumbest thing ever. So I'll shut it down in a weekend. And that weekend turned into weeks, which turned into 9 months. And then in 2015, I did the smartest move ever, which was I put all my personal information on the internet out and said, hey, you know what? I don't think it's a globe anymore. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me why it's a globe. And just held my breath. And just started this huge snowball between media and subject matter experts. Those were definitely probably my favorite. All the people from the military and pilots and air traffic controllers and engineers were contacting me. And I still really didn't have that much faith in it going into 2016, but it just wouldn't. Not only would it not go away, but then a lot of other content creators were making things, and you, Ian, were getting into it, and Jaron and David Weiss and Bob Nodell, and now we've got guys, on your side of the pond. I mean, there's so many people everywhere that here I am 3 books later, and a Netflix documentary and endorsements every once in a while, at least before the pandemic. And it's been a wild ride. So short answer, no, I had no faith in it. I hated it. You all hated it. If you didn't hate it, you're lying. And in fact, it's a test I throw at people. I say, if you don't hate flat Earth in the first 20 minutes, there's probably something wrong with you, which means there's a few of you. There's probably something wrong. So There you go. My long-winded answer.
No, excellent, Mark. Well, what we're going to do, Mark, you said there, you've been subject to a documentary. You've had all the subject matter experts. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the subject matter experts? We have an audience here tonight where some are flat earthers and some are just waking up. And I've asked them, do they know Mark Sargent? And many don't. So the Flat Earth Clues is going to get another reload. So you're all right.
Oh yeah, no. I've been doing this long enough. I'm one of the original people that was doing this back in 2015. I've been doing this now for 8 years, to where I just got back from a meetup in Los Angeles a couple days ago, and I was talking to people. I was talking to this one guy. I had a sticker with my name on it. I'm talking to him. It's like, so you've done some things in flat Earth? It's like, yeah. Yeah, I've done a few things, man, but we'll get into that. So it's cool, and I don't mind. The subject matter experts, just so you know, I've got a playlist on my channel going all the way back. At least they didn't tear these down back in the day. Let me rattle off some really fast in order. U.S. Navy missile instructor, U.S. Navy submarine chief, career land surveyor, Navy submarine chief, another one, a flight instructor, industrial valve expert, U.S. Army artillery radar operator, international shipping expert, corporate travel agent, U.S. Air Force navigator, Australian intelligence officer, air traffic controller meets a flight instructor, U.S. Army master gunner, U.S. Army aviation and ground training combat expert, USDA surveyor, and goes on and on, commercial airline captain, defense. I'm not going to read all these. There's tons. There's tons. But they all, most of them didn't want to be anonymous, which was fantastic. The first one was Sean McCrary, who was a Sparrow missile instructor out of the United States Navy, and he just opened the door for everybody else. He'd been doing it for 10 years, and once he got into it, all the other military guys contacted me. The best part about this was I never had to pick up the phone. And if I've ever lived long enough to write an autobiography, it'll be called Unsolicited. I never had to do anything. People just started calling me, and again, because I put my phone number out there, and it's real, by the way. You can type in Flat Earth Mark into any search engine. You'll find all my personal information. I don't care.
Never do that.
Sorry. Clarify. By the way, and I noticed there's a number of women here in this group. Yeah, if you're a woman, never, ever put your contact information online. It's really a bad idea. Men can kind of get away with it, but women don't, because men have that stupid thing where, they'll just wake up drunk and be like, oh, she seems cute, and then they'll just call you. Doesn't matter what time. It's just so weird.
Mark, you of all the achievements and all of the things that you've done to wake everybody up, one of the things you did, which we spoke about recently, was you went on the UK This Morning or Good Morning Britain with Philip Schofield.
Yeah, how'd that turn out? Oh, I felt bad. I got to be honest, because it wasn't him, it was his brother. At least for the first part of it. As a matter of fact, I remember, because he came out, just so you guys know, I went out there and did a conference, some years back. And then they called me and they said, "Oh, hey, would you like to fly back to London to do the Philip and Holly show?" And it's like, sure, why the heck not? And he had just come out. And so I remember going on and and after, when the cameras had cut, I was like, "Yeah, good for you, man. Way to, at least be true to yourself." And then it's like, oh no, I came back to freaking haunt him. Because the perception is a dangerous thing. But yes, thank you. I enjoyed doing the Philip and Holly show. Even bad, the old saying, even bad publicity is good publicity, isn't really how it went. The original saying is even bad publicity is free. And so, like, in fact, on a side note, in probably my most intimidating interview ever, and I can't remember what show. So Philip and Holly, was that Good Morning Britain, or was that something else?
Something like that. This Morning, it might have been.
Oh, okay. So I did Good Morning Britain with Piers Morgan, and I had watched him. He had done, yeah, Piers Morgan. No, he worked for us over in the States, and I was like going, oh, this guy's gonna come after me. He is not going to tolerate this for a hot minute. And on top of that, he had one of our astronauts sitting right next to him in the studio. And I'm going, oh, this is going to end horribly. And I've got people watching this going, it's like, attack the astronaut. I was going, no, I can't, because I'm coming in through video feed and they'll just cut me off. The producers have no qualms about it. It's like, oh, hey, we lost Mark Sargent. We'll try to get him back after the commercial. No, that wouldn't work. So Pierce spent most of his time deflecting for the astronaut and didn't attack me. And toward the end, he couldn't have been more personable to me. And it's like, all right, it works. So my most intimidating thing ever went away. The most fun, sorry, one more British thing for you. The most fun I had, believe it or not, was a last minute interview from Russell Brand, of all people. And got to do his podcast when and they called me up and they said, "Oh, hey, be on in like 4 hours to do Russell." And it's like, it's going to be like 3 a.m. my time, but sure, why not? I'm not going to say no to that. And it was cool. Because now he's distanced himself from mainstream media and is doing he's doing podcasts where he's laying out everybody. Anyway, sorry. I ramble. Go. What else you got?
When did you have your show with Russell Brand? Because I have a same as David Icke. I think they're gatekeepers. I think they can't talk about our subject for whatever reason, or they're willfully ignoring it. But when was your show? Because I don't remember that.
When was it? Oh, it was when he was doing his midday show, which is why it was so early. So it would have been pushing about noon your time. I'd have to look it up, but I will find it for you before I am done. How's that?
Yes, Mark, send me a copy. Send it to me, and then I'll share it with the group, because I don't remember it myself. So
yep, can do.
No worries. Okay, Mark, this is a Q&A. All right. So what we're going to do is I've got a list of people here that are going to ask you some questions, if that's okay.
Nope, I don't think so. Nope, no questions.
With Karen, the lovely Karen. She sits over here. Karen. She's changed to another lady called Tracy.
What? Karen? Oh, okay. So Tracy.
I'm asking this for the people. Please don't think I'm rude. But why do people think you're a show?
Oh, my God. All right.
Ian, you want to ask nice questions first? You want to go straight?
I don't mind. Look, I have heard this for 8 years, and it all started from a very nice young man out in Thailand named Eric Dubé, which I am sure some of you have run into. He and I, for whatever reason, he does not like me. We have never actually spoken. He made this enemies list and he published it online. It's like, here are the top 10 flat earthers I hate, and I was number 1 with a bullet. And he even convinced, in the documentary, he wasn't kidding. He convinced ODD, one of our guys out here in Denver, and he convinced him to tell all the people that had bought tickets, non-refundable tickets for the first conference in 2017, not to go. So there's this little scene. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, there's going to be 150 seats in the back that are paid for, but they're going to be empty. And it's like, why? Because he convinced everyone that you and Patricia were government agents. And it's like, come on. Anyone that's spent any time talking to me at all is like, look, either I'm the greatest secret agent in the world or I'm the worst. And it can't be both. And again, you, Ian, and I have talked forever. So that's why. It has nothing to do with what I've done. Look, I've doxed myself. In fact, I'm on an island near Canada right now. There's no facility, as far as I know, anywhere near here. So it's just ego. That's all it is, which is fine. So that's why I'm called a shill. That's it. It's just something that started by Eric 8 years ago, and again, he was pitching to the right crowd because look, the truther community, I'm one of them, are naturally suspicious. So I still to this day, it's like, oh, David's good, Eric's good, and Matt's good. Oh, Mark, he's a little suspicious, and then they just keep moving on. It's like, okay, nothing I can do. So if anyone wants to email me,
Mark, you're not a shill. You're not a shill.
Am I not?
Good guy.
Could be. Why not? I could be. No.
Yeah, you really are the worst at it if that's the case, right? You're the worst shit ever.
Right. I am. So okay. So one more thing, which is what would my end game be? It's like, wow, it's a pretty long plan if I've been doing this for 8 years, and I haven't turned anyone away from flat Earth. So whatever. Anyway.
Good stuff. Right, I have another question from a lovely young lady called Tina. Yes. And she has driven an awful long way to come here today. Tina.
Tina from Taunton. Well, actually, my questions have been answered already. So my question was, what got you into flat Earth? And you've answered that. And then I was going to ask about good morning. You've answered that. So let's hear what you did before flat Earth. What were you doing before that for a living?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, other than, working for government agencies for 30 years.
Mark, hold on.
What?
Mark, could you also tell everyone how you got into flat Earth?
Sure.
What happened?
Sure. Well, you know what? Let me segue it from what I was doing. I'll do the abbreviated version of what I was doing before I got into flat Earth. I started out playing video games for a living, of all things. I won this little computer pinball tournament back in the mid 90s, and it segued into working for a company out in Boulder, Colorado. That really this was back in the day when it was like a 9-to-5 job, actually playing video games for a living. And then I do conferences and go to conventions and make the video games look better than they were. And that segued into proprietary software training, where I traveled mostly around the United States and somewhere a little outside the United States, teaching people about time and attendance software. And then that was basically what I was doing before I got into this. And I never married or had kids. And if you don't, you have a lot of free time on your hands. Huge amount. And so I'm old enough to where I was there when the internet was young, when you could actually finish the internet. Seriously, I'm not kidding. You could actually go, it's like, oh, that's pretty much everything that's on there. And I went down just about every rabbit hole you could think of. So I had an opinion on just about every conspiracy you could think of. Some I hated, some I didn't. But I seriously, I've got an opinion on all of them. So when people say, "Oh, it was JFK a lone gunman," it's like, no, probably not. I think it was a multi-operational group. But somebody else says, "Hey, did you know that Elvis had Bigfoot's baby?" And it's like, nah, I don't really like that one, so much. So I had gone into everything you could think of, and I still didn't want to look at flat Earth because we're taught this since we're children. It's like, no, flat Earth is idiotic. Why would you ever look into that? We've known since we're 6 years old. And then, again, when you start, as some of you know, when you start going down the threads, and if there's new people in the audience right now who have never gotten into it, I'll give you my non-reverse psychology thing, which is if you wake up every day and it's like life is great and thumbs up, everything's awesome, yeah, don't look into it, because there's a point of no return. It's very much like the Matrix red pill, blue pill thing, because once you can actually visualize the whole building structure flat Earth thing, you can't unsee it. Which is why I try to tell people every chance I get, it's like, look, I'm not here to convince you of flat Earth. I'm here to persuade you. I'm just going to put the idea in your head. You tear it down yourself. And when you tear it down, how do you put it back together? So be careful if you're going to look into this, because the whole ignorance is bliss thing, that's real. Yeah, you'll figure that out real fast. Anyway, what else?
Mark, what was the thing you looked at, researched, that made you go, holy moly?
It wasn't what most people see. Most people get into flat Earth. It was so strange. When I was doing this in 2015, I was a big fan of the Orlando Ferguson map from the 1800s. And it kind of looked like a roulette table with kind of upturned edges a little bit and kind of a bulge in the center, if you guys know what roulette tables look like. And then immediately people started running down to the beaches with, shooting long distance photography with cameras. And they were saying, no, dude, it's absolutely tabletop flat, and you should probably get rid of that other map anyway. It's like, oh, why? It's like, what? It's like, because you can't say the word roulette table. And I go, why can't you say that? It's because all the numbers on a roulette table add up to 666. And it's like, was that true? And it was absolutely true. And it's like, oh man. So I immediately stopped messing with that. So anyway, most people, it's long distance photography, which I never ever mentioned in the clues whatsoever. People just came up with that on their own. I don't even know who was the first one that started it. For me, though, it was the Antarctic Treaty, which was, ratified in 1959, which says that no corporation from any country, no matter how much money you have, can go down there and set up shop. And that was a massive red flag. I mean, everybody knows in the capitalism world, this world is run by greed and power and money. And nothing is outside of that. Nothing is bigger than that. I mean, different from where you guys are, you probably heard of what fracking is. You can frack over here in the United States. You can frack in your neighbor's backyard in a week. You can make that happen. It's just money. And a lot of it is thrown around. And yet, even though Antarctica was announced that there was tons and tons of resources there back in the mid-1950s, no corporation is not allowed to go down there. They're not even allowed to talk about it. That's the big one. And what I mean by that is, like, say that British Petroleum, wanted to go down there. Well, you know how that would work. They'd run full page ads in the London Times every freaking week. It's like, how great it would be for us to go down to Antarctica. They're not even allowed to do that. No one has ever protested this treaty. And by the way, it's the only unbroken treaty in the history of treaties. Treaties, are meant to be broken, and that one's completely unbroken. And it's not even up for review until 2041. And you're thinking, well, that's less than 20 years from now. It's like, yeah, but not when it was made. It was made in 1959. They pushed it out 80 years until you can talk about it again. When has that ever happened? There was some very serious pieces of legislation that were thrown down. So that was the big one for me, which was, it just screams that you're hiding something. It's like, what is bigger than money? And I'm sorry if somebody say, well, why would you even make the Antarctic Treaty? Well, because there are some things bigger than money. Think about this. Let's say British Petroleum was down there. Well, okay, how close are you going to watch them? Because if a plane goes off course or a helicopter goes off course, and they go far enough in the distance, maybe they'll see something they shouldn't, and then you got to tie up that loose end. You know what I mean? Wink, wink. And how many of those loose ends are you going to tie up? And so finally, it all comes down to, a small board meeting, and somebody at the end of the table goes, yeah, it's not even worth it. Just freaking lock this place down. And that was it. Antarctica, you can spend, I think in your case, 12,000 pounds to go down there and get in a rubber raft and have some pictures taken with penguins. That's about it. The rest of it, you cannot charter anything inland on your own and just start heading inland. It is absolutely forbidden. So there you go.
Excellent. Mark, I've got a gentleman here called Tony. He's a pilot or an ex-pilot for Ryanair of 25 years. Got a question for you?
Yeah.
Tony.
Hi there, Mark. In your strange world, which I listen to every week, sometimes live, which means that I don't get to bed till 5 o'clock in the morning, but I do like listening to it live, if not the next day. But I've listened to Strange World for whatever it is, 7, 8 years. But you always start off by saying, and yes, Caroline, if the date's not, look at calendar. So I did hear you say once before what the reason was, but I haven't found it again. So I'd like to know, who is Caroline? Why do you say that every week? And why is it such a standing joke?
Okay. It is an inside gag going all the way back to and if you were listening to the show long enough, you may or may not have picked this up. I've dated a number of flat earth women over the years. And one of them was a lovely woman out of Arizona named Caroline Walters. She's probably not listening now, so it's fine. I'm not doxing her or anything. She currently lives in Idaho. But she was really great, and she would listen to the show, and so it was sort of like if you remember, there was an American show over here called entertainer called Carol Burnett. And she used to tug on her ear at the end of the show. It was a little nod to her daughter, who was always watching at home. And so even though Caroline ended up moving to Idaho, and I know she's dating some of the guy right now, I left it in because it was kind of cute, and she appreciated it. Every once in a while, she'll still Skype message me and say things. So yeah, Caroline, she was how we met, just so you know, not to delve into personal stuff, but she was one of flat earth women are generally fairly upfront, and she drove, I think, 11 hours from Arizona to Colorado to meet me at a social gathering there, and it was a lot of fun, and we became fast friends and then more than friends, and it was really cool. So there you go. That's Caroline.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Right, I've got a more serious question. Apart from the Joe Jackson one every week on Strange World. You mentioned that, Joe Jackson. But on to something more serious. The Gleason's map.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that it's used as a symbol just about on every world organisation logo, minus, of course, Antarctica.
Right.
We won't mention. But everybody seems to be blind to the fact that it is a flat Earth map.
Yeah.
And I just find that very interesting, because if we were going to put a globe map on a logo, you'd think they'd use the other one where they show, the separate bits of a wide map. They certainly wouldn't show a flat Earth map, and they certainly wouldn't, a Mercator one. They certainly wouldn't show a Gleason's map. And I just wondered what to think of that.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I put that in the original clues, and what really caught my eye more than anything, I will take credit for a few things. I try to stay as humble as possible, but when I mentioned that the azimuthal equidistant projection, otherwise known as the flat Earth map, otherwise known as the UN flag, which that was the part that really got me, which was they're all identical. Absolutely identical. That particular map is used for all sorts of groups, but when the Flat Earth comes out and flies it as their flag, it's like, oh no, that's insane. And so I point to the UN flag more often than not, because I say, the UN flag has been around for some decades, and it's absolutely identical except for one thing that is clearly missing, and that is Antarctica. And that is, I believe that's one of those out of sight, out of mind things. Why would you leave off an entire continent off of the world map? And instead of Antarctica, they just create this wreath, this Greco-Roman wreath around the outside. You can always look it up. And I found that fascinating. So, but yeah, hiding in plain sight, it works. Absolutely works. With most people in most situations, they can't see the forest for the trees. They just don't know what they are looking at. And why would you ever think that? Even going back to pilots, I've talked to a number of pilots over the years that are into this, but either they can't see it, don't want to see it, or are afraid of saying that they saw it. The most common would be, there was this famous Japanese pilot in the 1980s who, a giant UFO was following him over Alaska, and our air defense systems were trying to, he had a 747 cargo jet, so there's nobody else on there except for the pilots. And they're trying to get him evasive maneuvers. This thing's following him for over an hour. He lands, and the Air Force is like, well, you probably shouldn't say anything about this. What do you think he does? He goes straight to the press. And he should have seen it. It was freaking huge. It was following me for so long. He was grounded. He went back to Japan. He never flew again. They didn't fire him, but they put him on a desk job. So anyway, there you go. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I've got one more question at the moment. It's a concern, and I just wanted to ask you about it. When we get the truth, when we look at information to get the truth, say, for example, the moon landings, we're all quite familiar now with Photoshop and all the rest and how it's all been faked. But much more recently now has come AI. And AI, they're now using to mimic people and people's voices. And even just today, I was listening on the radio that they're using it as a DJ. And they spent ages, this DJ is in Portland, Oregon, and also in Seattle. Yeah. They're using the AI to actually mimic her completely. Now then this leads on to podcasts, because some people I think are going to be doing podcasts using AI, which they can use to say virtually anything. So really my concern is how, when we're looking for truth now, when Photoshop and all of the movies are so perfect that you can't tell the difference, now you've got AI voices mimicking, maybe somebody that you really respect and saying things that are way off. How on earth do you make sure that you're not being misled?
Well, when it comes to, I've delved into AI quite a bit, and when it comes to AI, it can do some things pretty well. I heard it, like, you guys know who it's Emma Watson was the girl from Harry Potter, right? Right. Yeah. So, I'm sorry, what?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Okay, so Emma Watson, they had AI doing a quick dry read of Mein Kampf, just to show it's like, oh yeah, and because because her delivery is fairly slow and steady, it actually came off fairly realistic. Now it was just audio only, it wasn't video. Piecing together audio and video, that's quite comprehensive. As far as AI flooding the conspiracy world, maybe, but it's good, but it's not perfect. Most of the people in the truther community, they're fairly animated. Their tone and pitch and cadence goes up and down, and that's very, very tough to mimic. I mean, I've heard people send me my version, of AI, Mark AI, and it's kind of, the pitch is there, but that's really about all it is. And I haven't really seen it yet. Look, AI is not brand new, and so it hasn't flooded everything yet. Now, could you use it to temporarily flood an election, for example, with all sorts of fun stuff like we're going to be doing in the 2024 election over here? Yeah, possibly. I don't. There's only so much credibility. What they were initially trying for, sorry, not to drag this out too much, is that AI was initially being touted as Skynet. It's going to be this self-aware thing that's going to wipe out all of humanity. That is not AI. Our technology is not even remotely close. Mostly because, look, I come from a programming background. We don't even know how to start that programming. How to create something that's you're acting. It's like, oh, how do you create life in computers? It's like, no, we have no freaking idea. As far as flooding the information stuff, they don't have to use AI to do that. All they do is let mainstream channels cover it. If you go into YouTube, for example, and type in flat Earth, the first 50 to 60 are big channels that have nothing to do with us. They're monstrous channels. Now, I still take it as, even bad press is free. But if you're a brand new person, you're going through that. You go through the first 20 videos, and they're not exactly pro flat Earth. Tends to get in the way. So AI, they don't really need it to mess up the conspiracy world. The mainstream's doing it fine, just for them. So there you go.
I think. Good with that, Tony? Yeah. Good. Mark, I've got another question from a gentleman called Trevor. So
Trevor.
Hi, Mark. Right, yeah. On the documentary you did, because obviously when you tell people about that, well, before I sort of got into Flat Earth, I watched the documentary with a kind of an open mind, and it was all going good until the end, where it kind of leaves it a bit, oh yeah, what's going on here? Yeah. So is it true that they edited out the actual end result of what you got from the laser? Was it the lasers you did?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Okay. First off, let's get set. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about here, there was a Netflix documentary that was made a few years ago called Behind the Curve. Little play on words there because we're dumb. They're behind the curve. And the director and the producers by the end of that film hated us. They absolutely had nothing to do with Flat Earth. They were just a Hollywood film team that was trying to do a human interest story. And we didn't know they hated us until the movie was long over and there was an iTunes version that had director's commentary, which is still on there if you ever listen to the director's commentary. And it was when there was this 12-year-old kid at the convention who walked up to the microphone and was asking me questions on stage. And all of a sudden, all three of them, the director's commentary, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is when we all had to make a stand against Flat Earth. It's like, what? Why? It's because there's kids involved. It's like, what are you talking about? I didn't drag this kid in there. His parents were standing right next to him. I couldn't even see him because of the lights. It's like, oh, that's why I asked him. It's like, how old are you? It's like 12. And it's like, oh, great. What's your question? So, but to your point, yeah, the power of editing, never, ever underestimate that. The end where they took basically what they had to do was, because the movie was more or less done by the time they got to the convention, they decided to use what they had with editing and try to spin it in their direction, which was anti-Flat Earth. So they went after Bob with the hot mics, and they really went after Jaron at the end. To be fair, though, Jaron screwed up so many. Jaron completely screwed it up. And he knows this. I've said it a million times, which was, so it was a laser experiment, which they flew up from Los Angeles to San Francisco to do. And it was north, I think, of San Francisco where they did it. And the first time they did it, people don't know. You can't keep a laser on forever. Eventually the condenser melts and then the laser becomes useless. So the camera team had to go away mad. And so Jaron's like, oh, no, come back like in a couple weeks. I've totally got this. So he made them come back again, and then he shoots, and they're still not getting what they want. And so they, and everyone was criticizing them. It's like, well, did that prove, flat Earth, round Earth? And so Jaron does this podcast, this live stream, where he goes out to the site during the middle of the day. He does this like 2 months later. And he said, yeah, wow, this is the first time I've ever actually been out here in the daylight. It's like, wait a minute, you didn't go out there to like do a dry run before you brought the film team up? Turns out he never had level sight. He never had line of sight to begin with. He only assumed it was flat because Google Earth told him it was flat-ish. And that's why he brought the team up there. But then I can't criticize him too much because back in 2017, what did we know? We didn't know what the hell we were doing. Our experiments were rough at best. But the editing team, yeah, they took shots at us. Well, I'll give you one more quick little edit. Do you remember the green button scene with me at the Kennedy Space Center? Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was this little scene where I was sitting there and I was trying to get something to work, and there's this giant green button, and it wasn't working, so I was like hitting the screen, thought it was a touch screen. It wasn't a touch screen, and then the scene ends, and I walk away. And somebody at the editing department said, "Oh, you know what? Let's just edit the part out where Mark hits this giant singular green button. It'll make him look like he missed the obvious." And they told me this during the film festival. It's like, it's a good gag, sure. And I'm not going to complain too much, but it got laughs in the film. But at the same time, people, that was just a little dig that they took on us. So yes, power of editing. They chopped us up, and not only that. Sorry, one more thing. I don't want to drag this out too much, but they never even thought about making a sequel, and it would have been it still is easy for them to make a sequel for this. Never even thought about it. As soon as they were done and got the film festival, and once Amazon and Netflix and everybody bought it, they distanced themselves from us as they couldn't have gotten away from us faster. And to this day, none of them have ever called me about anything. So,
yeah, I've got another question actually. So, if you go on Facebook, you get a lot of flat Earth groups, and you get a lot of different opinions on what flat Earth is and how things work. But you get a lot of, say, the moon. People think it's made of rock, or it's a hologram, it's made of plasma. But I was wondering what you think, like how far away you think the sun is, and how big it actually is.
Oh, just the sun? Well, Let's do the whole thing. The sun and the moon and the stars. I mean, the sun and the moon are probably the same distance up, if they're three-dimensional at all. And by that, I mean, think about what we've done. And I know, again, I'm older and I don't know what you guys do over there with the UK. Do you guys have planetariums over there? Do you guys know what those are?
Yeah.
All right. So you lay down and you turn off the lights, and they put the stars and the moon up on the ceiling. They play pretty music, and over here during the weekends they do like a laser show and have things like Laser Floyd and Zeppelin, and people get really baked. So I've never gone, but when you're looking up at a planetarium, does the moon look spherical? Yeah. Can you land on it? No. Why? Because it's just a light on the ceiling. So how far is the three-dimensional or projection up there in the sky? Well, it's got to be higher than aircraft. So I don't know, maybe a few thousand miles, give or take. What's the technology that's powering it? I have no freaking idea. I mean, you got to remember that if you took an HD television, you took a flat screen television right now and threw it back 30 years in the past and showed somebody, they'd be staring at you like you were from, like an alien. It's like, where the hell did you get this thing? And imagine, what a technology that's 1,000 years faster than us could do. So when it comes to engineering, do I know exactly how everything gets powered up there? No, but I know that everything's way, way, way closer, which also, goes into the David Weiss thing where the sun is very, very tiny. And, that people, one of the most common arguments, by the way, as far as the sun and the moon goes, is that, well, why do you even have time zones? Because if the sun is so big, because we have to draw it on our maps like 1,000 miles wide just so you can see it. And if that's the case, well, it's going to be shining light everywhere. But if the sun is only 50 miles wide, but very, very bright, then yeah, it would shine, no different than a spotlight and just go off into the distance, which is brilliant engineering, in my opinion. So there you go. Sun, not that far up. Very, very small. Not very far up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mark, just quickly, you advocate in all of your things that we live in a type of terrarium with a globe, but as a snow globe, right, with a dome on the top. Do you still subscribe to the dome theory? And if so, why?
I do. And again, this was in the part of this was in the documentary, which is we'll call this loose polling, which is 70%, give or take, of the flat Earth community believe in some sort of dome, and another 30% or don't. But the 30% that don't, I've gotten the feeling that most of them is because they don't like to feel like they're hemmed in, they're fenced in. It's like, don't be all kept and bring down and put me in this box, right? It's like, yeah, okay, but you're still going to have to deal with the gravity versus the vacuum of space problem. It's one of the big reasons why I believe in the dome, which is if you guys know anything about a vacuum, it's nothing. What you're breathing in right now is like 20% oxygen and 80% nitrogen. And it's pressure, it's called air pressure for a reason. And as you get up higher, it gets less and less and less. However, according to the globe model, it eventually just turns into nothing into the vacuum of space. But that's impossible. You can't have, it's one of the laws of physics, which is you can't have pressurized air next to nothing, non-pressurized, without a barrier, a physical barrier. It has to equalize. And so eventually, give example, like you take a helium balloon, right? You let it go. It goes up and up and up and up and up and finally pops. Then the helium has to go somewhere. And someone says, oh, it gets to a certain point, it just hangs there. It's like, what, next to space? How does that work? And no scientist will touch this. They'll just say, oh, it's gravity. It's got to be gravity. It's like, no. I go, gravity can be defeated all day long down here. A quick little example for you. And I've used this a couple times. Let's say there's a second floor to the building you're in, right? You put a vacuum chamber in it. You have a valve. You pop it right now. It's instant. It's violent. The pressure will equalize. It's not like the movies, right? It's not like a rush of air and you feel it in your hair. No. It's incredibly fast. And so it would go upstairs, right? It would equalize that fast. So when you go outside, how is our atmosphere still there? It's the same gravity that was in your room that couldn't keep the gravity in your room couldn't keep the air from going upstairs. And by the way, sorry, one more thing, which is the gravity question, because I know there's some people out saying, oh, David Weiss, oh, well, it doesn't have to be gravity. I know there's buoyancy and density. I know it's a terrible impression of David, but I'm going to work with it. And he says, but when it comes, I use gravity because eventually you do have to deal with some magical molecular force. And by the way, one more thing, which is science can't tell you what gravity is, right? You guys already know this. They can only tell you what it does. They can show you the symptoms of gravity, but they can't reproduce it artificially. So there you go. I don't even remember what the original question was.
It's a different dome, Mark. But I mean, I think you're right in the effect that this is a pressurized environment. We breathe oxygen at 14 psi. We breathe and live in a pressurized environment. So there has to be pressurized, it has to be contained. Yeah. So I have always been a domer, always. I don't know how big the dome is, whether it's small and you can go outside it or not, I don't know. But it has to be pressurized. It is pressurized, and that's how we breathe air. So
yeah, again, one more thing. Whether you believe in climate change or not, doesn't the whole term greenhouse gases make more sense if it's an actual greenhouse?
Yeah, true. Well, we've got another couple of questions. I've got the lovely Sarah. I'm going to go around the long one.
I don't see Sarah.
Sarah's right in front of you.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Mark. Right, I want to ask you whether you think that we ever know where we live. Is the movement growing? Whether we all know where we live. Is the movement growing, exponentially?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're cutting out there for a second. Is the flat Earth movement growing exponentially? Is that what your question was? Oh yeah. It's freaky. It's massive, but at the same time, it is still a fairly quiet movement in that most people, because of friends, family, and coworkers, don't. I mean, 90% of our groups are still in the closet. Not to use a Phil reference, but it's true. Most of them are in the closet, and the reason is because peer pressure is a really, really strong thing. I'll give you an example. You guys will get this. So Chris Rock, a comedian over here, he was talking about how peer pressure works, and he was talking about the Spice Girls, for example. The Spice Girls is the #1 female group of all time, right? They've sold gajillion albums. And yet I have never met a person that will admit to owning one, right? Because it's just one of those albums you listen to when nobody else is looking. And that is flat earth to a T. You know, there's all sorts of great people that'll email me. It's like, oh, dude, flat earth, I'm so glad you're into it, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, don't use my name ever on air. It's like, okay. I mean, I've met people in positions of power. I've met celebrities. I've met all sorts of fun. The problem, like, here's a great example. Kyrie Irving, one of our basketball stars over here. When he came out, because he was so excited and so young, and he had just won his championship. When he came out, the media attacked him like lions on a gazelle. It was, they just would not let it go. And there were other celebrities that I talked to. It's like, yeah, did you see what happened to Kyrie? I'm not doing that. And so, yeah, we're monstrous. You know, we're growing and growing. Okay, I'll give you one more quick example. I'll show you how big flat Earth is and the paradox of it. So even our biggest flat Earth channels, after 8 years, if you go on YouTube, barely crack 6 figures in terms of subs. Right? However, if you type in flat Earth into YouTube and sort by view count, hundreds of millions, not pushing 1 billion views, all out of all, covered by every major channel you could think of. So what's happening is people are watching. Here's where it gets funny. Sorry, one more thing. They'll watch videos, they'll watch flat Earth videos, but they won't sub because they're afraid somebody in their family will see that they're subbed to them. And so they'll just keep typing to flat. Oh, they know the channel's names. They'll go watch them, but they won't sub them or even sometimes like the views, because again, you don't want it. They don't want a record of it. It's just so bizarre. Sorry, one more thing, which is if you want to see how big flat Earth is sometime, type in flat Earth and convert it to another language, right? Whatever it is, German, Italian, Chinese, and then take that word and plug it back into Google and see what happens. I mean, sorry, go ahead.
No. Carry on.
Yeah, so you will see. I mean, I don't know any other languages, so I have to deal with the English-speaking countries. But flat Earth is in all sorts of different countries, and we don't know about them. I mean, one of our guys, D Marble, was just whisked off for the pandemic to South Korea for a conference. It's like there was a flat Earth conference in South Korea. Or the look at the film festivals. You want to see some fun? Look at go to the Behind the Curve and look at the film festivals that it played in. We played in Moscow like 3 times, which was awesome. It's like, great. We're big all over. So yeah, we're huge. There you go.
Thank you. Mark, we're rounding up the questions now. There's a gentleman called Sean. Got a couple of questions for you.
What was his name?
Sean.
Sean?
Sean, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, Mark. I love your stuff. I've got a
Hi.
question. First one, can you hear me okay?
I can. I can't see your head, by the way. Your head's cut off.
Hi.
I see you there. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, we was talking about Antarctica earlier. Why do you think that world leaders, Dalai Lama, Vladimir Putin, royalty, all get taken down there at some point?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, that's just the thing. If you've got a really cool secret, so if the Americans and the Soviets, back then it was the Soviet Union, if they figured this out about 1960, now have access to the biggest secret of our civilization, at least currently. And eventually you're going to use that to your advantage. Now, what's down there? Oh, I've heard, it's just wild speculation, reckless speculation. A story which I like. During right after World War II, some of there was a project, an American project called Operation High Jump. Not a secret operation, supposedly a research mission where we sent down a full-blown carrier group. It was right after the surrender at Pearl Harbor. I'm sorry, not Pearl Harbor, in Tokyo. And Admiral Byrd goes down there. And supposedly it was to root out the last of the Nazi bases. Some of the movie stuff is true. Indiana Jones, not just a movie. This is public knowledge where the only country that was down there during World War II was Nazi Germany. So the story goes, and I kind of like this, is that somewhere down in Antarctica, I say down, but out, wherever you want to say, there is an advanced civilization, maybe a previous version of us, but definitely higher tech than us. And when the Americans came down to take out the Nazis, Germany went to the civilization and requested asylum. The remaining Germans. And I like the take on it because the supposedly it's like, okay, you can request asylum, but you're never coming back. And it's kind of like I don't know what you do over there. It's kind of like a high school dance. Once you get your stamp on your hand, you can't leave but you can't leave the gym and get drunk and come back. You're just going to be asking for trouble. So whatever happened, the Germans were the problem because Admiral Byrd, was doing research exploration, most of the 1950s all the way up until his death. So do I think the world leaders are being brought down there to be shown something? Yeah, I do. Why wouldn't you? If anything, it puts that seriousness in someone. It's like, hey, if you're at a certain level of power, you need to know what's up. And so, yeah, I do think that's why some people. Now, does that mean that everybody that goes down there gets to see it? No. I'm sure there's stages, different hierarchies to what you get to see. But yeah, I do think that's why it's happening.
Yeah, great answer. One more question, slightly off topic.
Okay.
Being a country-loving American as you are, is Joe Biden a clone, an actor with a mask? And what do you think of his performance?
I gotta tell you, because I had some running bets with some military friends of mine, and I cannot believe that, at one point it's like, well, no, there's no way he's going to run for re-election. And we were saying this back in, 2 years ago. It's like, there's no way he can run for re-election. He breaks records every single day. He's the oldest president in the history of presidents. He's going to be the oldest guy ever running for president in 2024. If he's a clone, it's not going so well. I mean, he's standing. Get him up to the podium. He can read stuff to a certain degree, and they kind of shuffle him off. Do I think he's a clone, though? I don't know. I mean, I don't like to use the word clones whenever possible. I'm not sure, but yeah, as far as the performance goes, it's pretty typical, right? I mean, he's 80 whatever, and he's got city miles on him. So no, but again, we'll see what happens in 2024. I can't wait. I don't vote, but I can't wait to see how the election pans out.
Mark, how do you think that election will pass out? How do you think it will pan out? Because one thing that Americans are good at is clearly voting exactly the same way as they did 4 years ago when it was allegedly stolen. So is there any new voting techniques?
If you wanted to take I've been firm on saying for some years now that the New World Order doesn't truly start until America is taken down a couple notches, right? Because we've been too full of ourselves for way too long. And so if you want to divide America even further, I would let Biden win again. I do the same. I would make the 2020 scenario identical, which means, you're going to bed, like what happened over here. It's like we went to bed. It's like, oh, yeah, Trump's got it, right? We wake up the next morning. It's like, so, yeah, he lost. It's what? How the hell did that happen? So you do the same thing, only make it worse to where it's absolutely a done deal. Absolutely a freaking done deal where they even, some people even call it. It's like, oh, no, Donald Trump's going to win this thing because it's going to be Trump versus Biden. There's nobody's even running, I think, on the blue team, and on red team, token people. So that's what I would do. I would set it up because more people will protest if Biden wins. It'll be more division if Biden wins. If Trump wins, yeah, blue team will protest and they'll whine and everything, but they're terrible at protesting. Red team knows how to protest. So that's what I think they're gunning for. That's really all it is.
Wow, that's amazing. I absolutely didn't think you'd say that at all. But we shall see.
Well, again, that's my point, which is everyone on red team. It's like, oh, Trump's got it. He's absolutely got it. This is the rematch we've been looking for, the big boxing match. And Trump's not even going to have to campaign. There won't even be debates, because he's going to be in court. Sorry, for those of you who don't know, he's been indicted, and they are going to keep him in New York, and so he'll be campaigning from the courthouse steps. So he'll be in court all day, and then he'll be coming out, and the media will talk to him, and it'll be awesome. And everyone will, and so he won't have to do a whistle-stopped train tour around the country. He's going to be stuck in New York for most of the campaign, and it's not going to hurt him at all because it's free media.
Yeah, see your point. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, are there any other questions you'd like to ask Mark? We have a question, Mark. We have a question from a new member.
So you're going to have to be louder than that.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have a question about the centre rather than the. Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
On maps up to slightly short of the 1800s, there were these 4 islands surrounding the North Pole called Bargus Lands, Bargus, and then all of a sudden they disappeared. Everybody put them on maps beforehand to cater everybody, professional map makers. Have you heard in modern times from pilots, people piloting icebreakers, US Geological Survey people, GPS experts, or anybody providing any evidence that those 4 islands, or the large metallic islands supposed to exist in the very centre, actually exist or not?
Gotcha. So the question is, do I think Mount Meru exists, and is there anything for or against it? Is that kind of where you're going with this?
Yeah, any modern whistleblowers who said that this land north of Peary Land in Greenland or north of Spitsbergen, that kind of thing.
Right. Okay. First off, officially, we got nothing as far as what's happening at the North Pole. I'll give you a quick example. Wow, got to be at least 5-6 years before I even got into flat Earth. There was a guy who tried to schedule, like I would think it was a Eastern Bloc icebreaker, and he was charging like $5,000 a head, and it was a limited thing. He was going to fill this boat up and head to the North Pole because he thought there was, quote unquote, something strange happening at the North Pole. And the whole thing kind of fell through, and then he died from some mysterious illness, fairly quickly, and that was it. It just kind of went away. Ever since then, no one's ever scheduled one. The closest I ever got was I can't remember if it was a British company or an American company that wanted to do a television show where the big finale was going to be at the North Pole, but that didn't happen either. So, for those of you who don't know, the North Pole, while strange, isn't as massive in scope as Antarctica, obviously. And could there be a giant magnetic body that's sitting at the North Pole, which is why our compasses point north? Sure. Do I think it's a pillar that reaches hundreds of miles high? Doubt it. Because at that point, you would have a whistleblower from one of the airlines. I've known a number of pilots over the years, and you just can't keep that sort of thing quiet. Because all your airlines, if you guys didn't know, don't fly directly over the North Pole. They skirt it by hundreds of miles on either side. They don't go over it, which is also, they also don't fly over Antarctica either, but that's a completely different thing. So, but if there was something that was hundreds of miles high, because when you're up high enough, just so you know, the air gets so thin you can see way, way, way further. Look up a great guy who makes videos called Tolan Media. He goes, even at 35,000 feet, he can see hundreds and hundreds of miles. And because you're looking through less atmosphere, so it doesn't compound over time. So, short version, do I think there's something up there magnetic? Yeah. Do I think it's a giant monolith? No. Do we have anybody that can confirm or deny it right now? No. As far as icebreaker missions going up there, I almost guarantee if somebody tries to schedule an icebreaker, if we forked over, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get something to go up there, it would probably be stuck in red tape. Because that's what I would do if it wouldn't take much to do it. So there you go. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. I've got another question. Tony, Mark.
Sorry, Mark. You've mentioned Jay Tolan, and I remember the dog camp going up to about 135,000 feet, showing that it's all nice and flat.
Yep.
But I did notice that the sky was black and there were no stars.
Yeah.
And everybody, even flat earthers who fly their balloons very high, the sky is black and no stars. And I'm not convinced that it's anything to do with the camera. So I'm wondering, and I wonder whether your thoughts on it, whether the stars were actually a lot lower, and maybe when you go up that high, you're above the stars.
There have been a number of books and articles published on this over the years, and I do think it has to do with part of the projection, which is what he's saying here is when you get up to a certain altitude, for some reason, and business flyers have noticed this at night, especially if you're doing red-eye flights, when you're getting up around 40,000 feet, there don't seem to be more stars, there seem to be less. And it shouldn't be that way, especially if you're flying in the dead of night. And I absolutely think there's something to it. I'll even throw one more out there as a wrinkle, which is the Artemis program, the American Mars. I'm sorry, the new American Moon mission. I call it Moon 2.0. Artemis 1 supposedly went around the moon and back, and it took by multiple cameras hundreds of hours of digital footage. And again, this is different, just to let you know, which is not only are there no stars when you get up to certain altitudes, right? You can't see any stars, but NASA goes out of their way not to show stars, to try to normalize it, I think, because in Artemis, all those hundreds of hours of footage, there's no stars to be seen. Now, back in the 60s, you could get away with to say, oh, it's a photography setting, it's an exposure setting, it's a camera setting. It's like, well, there might have been stars, but now it's all digital. I will say this, the future has given us some amazing cameras, and yet those cameras never showed a single star for the entire Artemis 1 mission, and which meant the whole thing was absolutely bogus and fake, which is why they blew Artemis 2 up. They just, big fireworks show. We'll see how long it takes for that thing to get off the ground next. So there you go.
Excellent. Has anybody got any more questions for Mark? No? Okay, Mark, listen, it's probably time now to wind it up. But what I would say is Mark is the author of something called The Flat Earth Clues. So for those who are new to the subject, please go and look Mark Sargent on YouTube. You'll find him. Just Google his name. Google it in YouTube.
But at this point, just so you guys know, everything's really changed since 2015. There's so much content out there. If you type in Flat Earth Clues, you're never going to find me. Just go to any search engine, type in Flat Earth Mark. Eventually, it will get to some rabbit hole that'll take you down somewhere. Eventually, you'll get to me. But if you type that into any, I don't care if it's BitChute or Brighteon or Rumble or YouTube or whatever it is, you'll find me. It's not hard.
Excellent. Well, all it remains for me to do, Mark, is to say thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here, ladies and gentlemen. Mark Sargent.
Thanks, guys. My pleasure. Drink responsibly.
We really
Drive
appreciate it,
safe.
and we'll catch you next time. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.